Vice President Al Gore, accompanied by Mrs. Mondale, Mrs. Quayle.
Þarna koma Walter Mondale, Dan Quayle og Al Gore fyrrverandi varaforsetar Bandaríkjanna ásamt eiginkonum sínum. Það var ekki mikið sést til Dan Quayle frá því að eina kjörtímabili þeirra Bush eldri lauk í Hvíta húsinu. En margir velta fyrir sér hvernig forseti Obama verður og það er ljóst að það eru gerðar miklar væntingar til hans. Vinsaldir hans hafa líka aukist frá því að hann var kjörinn forseti. Hann mælist með vinsaldir eða jákvætt viðhorf í kringum 80% þeirra sem artspurðir eru segjast hafa jákvæða skoðun. Meira að segja í Alabama hefur þeim fjölgað. 53% hvítra kjósenda í Alabama segjast hafa jákvæða skoðun. Það var bara 17% fyrir kosningar. Og raun og veru hefur verið kannað víða heim hvaða væntingar menn bera í brjósti. Í könnun sem að BBC lét gera í 17 þjóðlöndum sögðust 67% vona að hann myndi styrkja tengsl Bandaríkjanna við aðrar þjóðir og taka meira mark á því sem að þar væri lagt til málana. Vekur athygli að Rússar og Japanar eru síður bjartsýnni en aðrir og Evrópubúar, sérstaklega í Ítalíu og Þýskalandi. 80% segjast vera vongóðir. Og sérfræðingar og spekingar sem að rýna í forsetasögu og hvernig forsetar beita valdinu eru margir að spekulera og spá því að Obama geti orðið einn af valdamestu forsetum Bandaríkjanna og hann sé í raun og veru í einstakri stöðu til þess að endurmóta forsetembættið. En fylgjast aðeins með. Það er Bush eldri og Barbara Bush, fyrrverandi forseti og forsetafrú og að sjálfsögðu foreldrar núverandi forseta sem verður forseti í það bil 3 korter í viðbót. Og það barast afskaplega óljósar fréttir af því fyrir það bil hálftíma síðan að það sem þýtt hefur verið sem heimavarnaráðuneyti Bandaríkjanna eða landvarnaráðuneyti Bandaríkjanna og alríkislögreglan FBI vinni að rannsókn vísbendinga að einhvers konar ógn steðji að nýja forsetanum eða forsetaefninu eins og hann er núna eða verðandi forseta. Einhvers konar hótun mun hafa borist fyrr í dag en það er lítið gefið upp hvers kyns hótunin er eða hversu alvarlega hún er tekin, en þó hefur Reuters fréttastofan eftir talsmönnum landvarnaráðuneytisins að verið sé að rannsaka þessar hótanir. Og þarna voru Jimmy Carter og frú á leiðinni. Og þarna sjáum við mannfjöldan sem að hýrist úti hitinn í kringum frostmark og í borg sem reist á mýri eins og Washington þýðir frostmark svo sem á köflum bítandi kulda því rakinn er talsverður. Og þarna er nýr utanríkisráðherra Bandaríkjanna, Hillary Clinton ásamt eiginmanni sínum. Ætli þau falli ekki í þann litríka flokk sem kallast Hátíðahöldin sem raunar hafa staðið meira að minna frá því helgina standa svo fram eftir kvöldi og eins og ég sagði það eru 10 böll sem Obama hjónin þurfa að fara á áður en þau fá að fara heim í bólið. En embættismennirnir sem að vinna fyrir ríkisstjórnina og vinna meðal annars í Hvíta húsinu, þeir taka hins vegar til starfa núna bara strax eftir hádegi á bandaríska tíma, þar að segja þegar Obama verður eftir að búið hann er búinn að sverja embættiseið. Þeir taka til óspilltra málana og eiga strax að undirbúa fyrstu aðgerðir nýs forseta. Og raun og veru eina ástæðan fyrir því að hann ætlar ekki að skrifa undir forsetatilskipanir og fleira þetta einfaldlega til þess að varpa ekki skugga á hátíðahöldin. Hann gæti raun og veru þegar gripið til aðgerða en mun hins vegar alltaf bíða til morguns en þá hins vegar þétt dagskrá framundan. Hann ætlar meðal annars að hitta hershöfðingja og sérfræðinga til að ræða ástandið í Írak og Afganistan og hvernig hægt að reyna að snúa þeirri þróun sem í báðum löndum. Hann hefur lofað því að kalla herlið heim frá Írak innan 16 mánaða. Og það raunar talið eitt af þeim kosningalofunum sem harðast verið gengið á eftir. Það að segja að hann verði ekki síst mældur og árangur hans verið mældur eftir því hvort honum tekst að koma herliðinu heim. Við sáum þarna Bush-hjónin og Clinton-hjónin tala saman. Það er athyglisvert að segja frá því að þeir Bush eldri og Clinton hafa unnið náðu saman meðan hans í gegnum stofnun Clintons, Clinton Global Initiative ef ég man rétt, og hafa raun og veru náð saman. Sumir hafa talað að það var á köflum kæranum milli þeirra Bush eldri og Clintons eldri en Bush eldri og Bush yngri. Það var ítrekað borist fregnir af því að sá eldri hafi skammað son sinn fyrir embættisgjörðir sínar og það sést nú svo sem alveg á því hvað það fer nú bara mjög vel á með þeim þarna, það verður ekki neitað. Og með það var Jimmy Carter.
Ladies and gentlemen, the 39th President of the United States, Jimmy Carter and Mrs. Rosalind Carter.
Jimmy Carter líklega sá forseti Bandaríkjanna minnst að kosti á síðustu áratugum sem hefur notið mestra vinsælda eftir að hann yfirgaf Hvíta húsið. Hann þótti ekkert sérstaklega vel heppnaður forseti eða standa sig neitt afburða vel en eftir að hann yfirgaf Hvíta húsið og hleypti Ronald Reagan að hafa vinsældir hans aukist. Hann hefur verið upptekinn við að sinna friðarviðræðum og málamiðlum af ýmsu tagi og skeytt sér af málum af öllu tagi og ennþá eins og sést býsna brattur. Afsakana á þessum mynd- og hljóðtruflum sem eru á útsendingunni en svona berast myndirnar gervihnött og ég gerir ráð fyrir að það séu nokkur hundruð myndavélar á þessum litla bletti í Washington og flestar þeirra búnar sendum og aðrar snúrum sem einhverjur eru að stíga á. Það ferði ekki mikið til þess að svona brestir komi í myndina og við látum það svo sem ekki mikið á okkur fá.
Ladies and gentlemen, the 42nd President of the United States, William Jefferson Clinton, and Senator Hillary Rodham Clinton.
Utanríkisráðherra Bandaríkjanna sem áður var megin keppinautur Obama útlendingu demókratana sagði hann að guðdómlegir kórar myndu syngja og allir myndu breyta rétt og heimurinn yrði fullkominn. Hún var að sjálfsögðu að gera lítið úr honum en núna er komin í ráðuneytið hans. Clinton hjá nefndi sér góðan tíma í að taka í hendur áttsettra embættismanna í nýrri ríkisstjórn Obama sem er kannski ekki skrítið því að ansi margir hafa nú starfsreynslu úr stjórn Clintons. Þarna koma Obama-dæturnar báðar.
Children of the Vice President-elect, Captain Beau Biden, Hunter Biden, and Ashley Biden, accompanied by House Chief Administrative Officer Dan Beer.
Eldri dótturinn heitir Malia Ann og hún fæddist 1998. Svo yngri heitir Natasha en er venjulega kölluð Sasha og hún fæddist 2001. Þannig sjáum við þær Laura Bush og Lynn Cheney, forsetafrú og varaforsetafrú, í heilar 34 mínútur viðbót. stelpurnar munu báðar ganga í Sidwell skólan í Washington sem að stundum kallaður Harvard enga barnaskóla í Washington. Þangað gengur líka börn Teddy Roosevelt, Richard Nixons og Bill Clintons og einhvern dæmis ég tekið.
Gentlemen, the First Lady, Mrs. Laura Bush, and the wife of the Vice President, Mrs. Lynn Cheney, accompanied by Secretary Chao, Mrs. Bennett, Mrs. Boehner, and Republican Staff Director of the U.S. Senate Committee on Rules and Administration, Mary Sue Jones.
Þá eiga svo sem ekki margir eftir að bætast í hópinn í raun og veru einungis þeir Joe Biden og Barack Obama og sjálfsögðu einhverjur þeirra. Michelle og Barack Obama kynntust í Chicago í júní 1989 þegar bæði unnu hjá sömu lögfræðistofunni. Hún vann þar og hann var þar sem nemi eða starfsmaður yfir sumar. Og sagan segir að það hafi strax verið glæringar en Michelle var ekki spennt fyrir því að fara á stefnumót með Obama þegar hann reyndi og hann þurfti að leggja sig allan fram til að sannfæra hana. Hún hélt hann væri svolítið sleipur, hall sem mál og var ekki vissum að þetta væri nú alveg sú manngeri sem hún væri spennt fyrir. En þrautseigja hans virðist hafa skilað sér. sérkennilegur og hálf einmannalegur gangur fyrir sitjandi forseta að taka þessi síðustu skref í embætti einhvern veginn yfirgefin og ekki sérlega vinsæl. Það kemur Dick Cheney í hjólastólnum eftir að hafa tognað á baki, eða í baki. Það var að brölta við að flytja út úr bústað varaforsetans yfir í húsi sem þau hjónin keyptu sér í McLean Virginíu, einu af ólíklega fínasta úthverfi Washingtonborgar.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States, the Honorable George Walker Bush, and the Vice President of the United States, Dick Cheney, accompanied by Senate Republican leader, Senator Mitch McConnell, Senator Robert Bennett, House Republican leader, Representative John Boehner, and Secretary for the Minority, David Chiappa.
I saw you up there. All right, gentlemen. Vice President, keep up the good work.
Samkvæmt könnun sem gerð var fyrir CNN og birt var á sunnudaginn líta 68% arðsburða svo á að forsetatíð Bush hafi verið algjörlega misheppnuð. 44% segja að það hafi verið vegna þess að hann hefði einfaldlega ekki verið betur til starfans hæfur. 22% segja að aðstæður sem hann hefði ekki ráð við hafi haft meira með þetta að gerast. Og þarna er Joe Biden, verðandi varaforseti Bandaríkjanna. Eiginkona Bidens greindi frá því í spjallþætti Oprah fyrir nokkru að í sumar eða haust hefði Obama reyndar boðið Biden 2 störf og hann hefði mátt velja hvort hann vildi frekar vera varaforseti eða utanríkisráðherra. Fylgir sögunni að Biden hafi orðið vandræðilegur á svip og eiginkonan raun og veru líka þar sem ekki hafa kannski endalega verið alltaf þess að frá þessu við greint. En hún greindi þó frá því samt eiginkonan að og hún hefði sagt við karl sinn að ef hann væri varaforseti yrði hann frekar heima hjá fjölskyldunni sinni þar sem utanríkisráðherra væri hann alltaf á þeytingi og þeim myndi aldrei sjá hann. Spurningin sem er á sjálfsögðu ósvarað hefði Biden kosið að vera utanríkisráðherra ætli Hillary Clinton væri þá að fara að sværa embættisins sem varaforseti?
Inaugural coordinator for the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, Jennifer Griffin. Senate Deputy Sergeant-at-Arms, Drew Willison. House Deputy Sergeant-at-Arms, Kerry Hanley. Senate Majority Leader, Senator Harry Reid. House Majority Leader, Representative Steny Hoyer.
Og þarna sjáum við Nancy Pelosi, forseta þingsins og Barack Obama á fram á tröppurnar við þinghúsið.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Vice President-elect of the United States, Joseph R. Biden, Jr.
Obama svona frekar alvarlegur á svipinn, en það kannski ekki skrítið þegar hann að taka við starfi sem krefst þess að hann leysi úr verstu efnahagskreppu sem gengið hefur yfir milli Bandaríkjanna og svo stærsta hluta heimsins í 70 ár og hann þarf að finna út úr 2 stríðum. Fyrsti maðurinn sem hann mun hins vegar tilnefna og fá starf mun vera George Mitchell sem mun fá þann starfa að vera sendifulltrúi Obama og Bandaríkjanna í Miðausturlöndum. George Mitchell var lengi þingmaður og er nú kannski þekktari víðast hvar heimi frekar sem sá sem að stýrði friðarsamningar umleitum á Norður Írlandi á sínum tíma og þóttist taka nokkuð vel til það.
Director for the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, Howard Gantman. The Senate Sergeant-at-Arms, Terrence W. Gaynor. The House Sergeant-at-Arms, Wilson Livingood. Chairman of the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, Senator Dianne Feinstein. Senator Robert Bennett. The Speaker of the House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi. Senate Majority Leader, Senator Harry Reid. House Majority Leader, Representative Steny Hoyer. House Republican Leader, Representative John Boehner.
I decided to come back. Groundhog Day.
President-elect of the United States, Barack H. Obama. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
Nú tekum við tónlistardagskrá þar sem að meðal annars verður koma fram drengjakór, stúlknakór.
Ladies and gentlemen, the chairman of the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, the Honorable Dianne Feinstein.
Og fyrst átt að hleypa á Dianne Feinstein, þingmanni.
Mr. President and Vice President, Mr. President-elect and Vice President-elect, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the inauguration of the 44th President of the United States of America. The world is watching today as our great democracy engages in this peaceful transition of power. Here on the National Mall, where we remember the founders of our nation and those who fought to make it free, we gather to etch another line in the solid stone of history. The freedom of a people to choose its leaders is the root of liberty. In a world where political strife is too often settled with violence, we come here every 4 years to bestow the power of the presidency upon our democratically elected leader. Those who doubt the supremacy of the ballot over the bullet can never diminish the power engendered by nonviolent struggles for justice and equality, like the one that made this day possible. No triumph tainted by brutality could ever match the sweet victory of this hour and of what it means to those who marched and died to make it a reality. Our work is not yet finished, but future generations will mark this morning as the turning point for real and necessary change in our nation. They will look back and remember that this was the moment when the dream that once echoed across history from the steps of the Lincoln Memorial finally reached the walls of the White House. In that spirit, we today not only inaugurate a new administration, we pledge ourselves to the hope, the vision, the unity, and the renewed call to greatness inspired by the 44th President of the United States, Barack Obama. Thank you, and God bless America. At this time, I call upon Dr. Rick Warren, pastor of the Saddleback Church in Lake Forest, California, to provide the invocation.
Feinstein bauð þarna fólk velkomið og lagði áherslu á þau friðsamlegu valdaskipti sem væru einkenni Bandaríkjanna. Það væri rót frelsis að menn fengi að kjósa sér ráðamenn.
Let us pray. Almighty God, our Father, everything we see and everything we can't see exists because of you alone. It all comes from you. It all belongs to you. It all exists for your glory. History is your story. The scripture tells us, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God. The Lord is one. And you are the compassionate and merciful one, and you are loving to everyone you have made." Now today, we rejoice not only in America's peaceful transfer of power for the 44th time, we celebrate a hinge point of history with the inauguration of our first African-American President of the United States. We are so grateful to live in this land, a land of unequaled possibility, where the son of an African immigrant can rise to the highest level of our leadership. And we know today that Dr. King and a great cloud of witnesses are shouting in heaven, "Give to our new president, Barack Obama, the wisdom to lead us with humility, the courage to lead us with integrity, the compassion to lead us with generosity. Bless and protect him, his family, Vice President Biden, the cabinet, and every one of our freely elected leaders. Help us, oh God, to remember that we are Americans, united not by race or religion or blood, but to our commitment to freedom and justice for all. When we focus on ourselves, when we fight each other, when we forget you, forgive us. When we presume that our greatness and our prosperity is ours alone, forgive us. When we fail to treat our fellow human beings and all the earth with the respect that they deserve, forgive us. And as we face these difficult days ahead, may we have a new birth of clarity in our aims, responsibility in our actions, humility in our approaches, and civility in our attitudes, even when we differ. Help us to share, to serve, and to seek the common good of all. May all people of goodwill today join together to work for a more just, a more healthy, and a more prosperous nation and a peaceful planet. And may we never forget that one day all nations and all people will stand accountable before you. We now commit our new president and his wife, Michelle, and his daughters, Malia and Sasha, into your loving care. I humbly ask this in the name of the one who changed my life, Yeshua, Isa, Jesus, Jesus, who taught us to pray, "Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever. Amen."
Þetta var hinn umdeldi prestur Rick Warren sem þarna lauk bæna ávarpi sínu með faðirvorinu.
To introduce world-renowned musical artist Aretha Franklin to sing "My Country, 'Tis of Thee."
My Country 'Tis of Thee heitir þetta lag, en margir þekkið einfallega sem America, sem að kann að hljóma kunnulega er lagið sjálft, því þetta er raun og veru afbökun eða útgáfa af breska þjóðsöngnum God Save the King, eða Queen eins og það reyndar í dag.
Robert Bennett.
It is my great honor to introduce Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States, John Paul Stevens, who will give the oath of office, administer the oath of office to the Vice President-elect.
Þá er komið að því að varaforseta efnið, eða verðandi varaforseti Joe Biden sverji sinn embætti sitt.
I, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., do solemnly swear
I, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
that I take this obligation freely,
that I take this obligation freely,
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
and I will well and faithfully discharge
the duties of the office on which I am about to enter.
the duties of the office upon which I'm about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God. Thank you, Mr. Justice.
Og þar með er Joe Biden orðinn 2004. Varaforseti Bandaríkjanna.
It is my pleasure to introduce a unique musical performance. Mr. Itzhak Perlman, violinist, Anthony McGill, clarinetist, Yo-Yo Ma, cellist, and Gabriela Montero, pianist, performing Air and Simple Gifts, a composition arranged for this occasion by John Williams.
Þetta lítur að teljast nokkuð vel að þessu viki því eins og stendur 2 gráðu frost í Washington. Og þeir segja hérna hjá bandarísku viðstofan að sé vindurinn tekið með og regnaður með þá sé þetta raun og eins og stend út í 6 gráðu frosti á jakkafötunum með slitsið að blása í klarinett. En þá er komið að því að Barack Obama sverji embættiseið sinn sem 40. og 4. forseti Bandaríkjanna og sá fyrsti þeldauki, það er John Roberts, forseti Hæstaréttar Bandaríkjanna sem sér að sverja embættiseiðinn með honum eða láta hann sverja embættiseiðinn og að því loknu flytur Obama fyrsta ávarpið sem forseti Bandaríkjanna.
Are you prepared to take the oath, Senator?
I am.
I, Barack Hussein Obama,
I,
do
Barack-
solemnly swear
I, Barack Hussein Obama, do solemnly swear
that I will execute the office of President to the United States faithfully,
that I will execute
faithfully the office of President of
the
the
office
United
of President of the
States,
United States faithfully,
and will, to the best of my ability,
and will, to the best of my ability,
preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
So help you God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President. All the best wishes.
Nýr forseti Bandaríkjanna.
It is my great personal honor to present the 44th President of these United States, Barack Obama.
Thank you. Thank you. My fellow citizens, I stand here today humbled by the task before us, grateful for the trust you've bestowed, mindful of the sacrifices borne by our ancestors. I thank President Bush for his service to our nation. As well as the generosity and cooperation he has shown throughout this transition. 44 Americans have now taken the presidential oath. The words have been spoken during rising tides of prosperity and the still waters of peace. Yet, every so often, the oath is taken amidst gathering clouds and raging storms. At these moments, America has carried on not simply because of the skill or vision of those in high office, but because we, the people, have remained faithful to the ideals of our forebears and true to our founding documents. So it has been, so it must be with this generation of Americans. That we are in the midst of crisis is now well understood. Our nation is at war against a far-reaching network of violence and hatred. Our economy is badly weakened, a consequence of greed and irresponsibility on the part of some, but also our collective failure to make hard choices and prepare the nation for a new age. Homes have been lost, jobs shed, businesses shuttered. Our health care is too costly, our schools fail too many, and each day brings further evidence that the ways we use energy strengthen our adversaries and threaten our planet. These are the indicators of crisis, subject to data and statistics. Less measurable, but no less profound, is a sapping of confidence across our land. A nagging fear that America's decline is inevitable, that the next generation must lower its sights. Today, I say to you that the challenges we face are real. They are serious and they are many. They will not be met easily or in a short span of time. But know this, America, they will be met. On this day, we gather because we have chosen hope over fear, unity of purpose over conflict and discord. On this day, we come to proclaim an end to the petty grievances and false promises, the recriminations and worn-out dogmas that for far too long have strangled our politics. We remain a young nation, but in the words of Scripture, the time has come to set aside childish things. The time has come to reaffirm our enduring spirit, to choose our better history, to carry forward that precious gift, that noble idea passed on from generation to generation, the God-given promise that all are equal, all are free, and all deserve a chance to pursue their full measure of happiness. In reaffirming the greatness of our nation, we understand that greatness is never a given. It must be earned. Our journey has never been one of shortcuts or settling for less. It has not been the path for the faint-hearted, for those who prefer leisure over work or seek only the pleasures of riches and fame. Rather, it has been the risk-takers, the doers, the makers of things, some celebrated, but more often men and women obscure in their labor, who have carried us up the long, rugged path towards prosperity and freedom. For us, they packed up their few worldly possessions and traveled across oceans in search of a new life. For us, they toiled in sweatshops and settled the West, endured the lash of the whip, and plowed the hard earth. For us, they fought and died in places like Concord and Gettysburg, Normandy and Quai San. Time and again, these men and women struggled and sacrificed and worked till their hands were raw so that we might live a better life. They saw America as bigger than the sum of our individual ambitions, greater than all the differences of birth or wealth or faction. This is the journey we continue today. We remain the most prosperous, powerful nation on earth. Our workers are no less productive than when this crisis began. Our minds are no less inventive, our goods and services no less needed than they were last week or last month or last year. Our capacity remains undiminished. But our time of standing pat, of protecting narrow interests and putting off unpleasant decisions, that time has surely passed. Starting today, we must pick ourselves up, dust ourselves off, and begin again the work of remaking America. For everywhere we look, there is work to be done. The state of our economy calls for action, bold and swift, and we will act, not only to create new jobs, but to lay a new foundation for growth. We will build the roads and bridges, the electric grids and digital lines that feed our commerce and bind us together. We will restore science to its rightful place and wield technology's wonders to raise healthcare's quality and lower its cost. We will harness the sun and the winds and the soil to fuel our cars and run our factories, and we will transform our schools and colleges and universities to meet the demands of a new age. All this we can do. All this we will do. Now, there are some who question the scale of our ambitions, who suggest that our system cannot tolerate too many big plans. Their memories are short, for they have forgotten what this country has already done, what free men and women can achieve when imagination is joined to common purpose and necessity to courage. What the cynics fail to understand is that the ground has shifted beneath them, that the stale political arguments that have consumed us for so long no longer apply. The question we ask today is not whether our government is too big or too small, but whether it works, whether it helps families find jobs at a decent wage, care they can afford, a retirement that is dignified. Where the answer is yes, we intend to move forward. Where the answer is no, programs will end. And those of us who manage the public's dollars will be held to account, to spend wisely, reform bad habits, and do our business in the light of day, because only then can we restore the vital trust between a people and their government. Nor is the question before us whether the market is a force for good or ill. Its power to generate wealth and expand freedom is unmatched. But this crisis has reminded us that without a watchful eye, the market can spin out of control. The nation cannot prosper long when it favors only the prosperous. The success of our economy has always depended not just on the size of our gross domestic product, but on the reach of our prosperity, on the ability to extend opportunity to every willing heart. Not out of charity, but because it is the surest route to our common good. As for our common defense, we reject as false the choice between our safety and our ideals. Our founding fathers, faced with perils that we can scarcely imagine, drafted a charter to assure the rule of law and the rights of man, a charter expanded by the blood of generations. Those ideals still light the world, and we will not give them up for expedience sake. And so, to all the other peoples and governments who are watching today, from the grandest capitals to the small village where my father was born, know that America is a friend of each nation and every man, woman, and child who seeks a future of peace and dignity, and we are ready to lead once more. Recall that earlier generations faced down fascism and communism, not just with missiles and tanks, but with the sturdy alliances and enduring convictions. They understood that our power alone cannot protect us, nor does it entitle us to do as we please. Instead, they knew that our power grows through its prudent use. Our security emanates from the justness of our cause, the force of our example, the tempering qualities of humility and restraint. We are the keepers of this legacy. Guided by these principles once more, we can meet those new threats that demand even greater effort, even greater cooperation and understanding between nations. We will begin to responsibly leave Iraq to its people and forge a hard-earned peace in Afghanistan. With old friends and former foes, we will work tirelessly to lessen the nuclear threat and roll back the specter of a warming planet. We will not apologize for our way of life, nor will we waver in its defense. And for those who seek to advance their aims by inducing terror and slaughtering innocents, we say to you now that our spirit is stronger and cannot be broken. You cannot outlast us, and we will defeat you. For we know that our patchwork heritage is a strength, not a weakness. We are a nation of Christians and Muslims, Jews and Hindus, and non-believers. We are shaped by every language and culture, drawn from every end of this earth. And because we have tasted the bitter swill of civil war and segregation and emerged from that dark chapter stronger and more united, we cannot help but believe that the old hatreds shall someday pass, that the lines of tribes shall soon dissolve, that as the world grows smaller, our common humanity shall reveal itself, and that America must play its role in ushering in a new era of peace. To the Muslim world, we seek a new way forward based on mutual interest and mutual respect. To those leaders around the globe who seek to sow conflict or blame their society's ills on the West, know that your people will judge you on what you can build, not what you destroy. To those who cling to power through corruption and deceit and the silencing of dissent, know that you are on the wrong side of history, but that we will extend a hand if you are willing to unclench your fist. To the people of poor nations, we pledge to work alongside you to make your farms flourish and let clean waters flow, to nourish starved bodies and feed hungry minds. And to those nations like ours that enjoy relative plenty, we say we can no longer afford indifference to the suffering outside our borders, nor can we consume the world's resources without regard to effect. For the world has changed, and we must change with it. As we consider the road that unfolds before us, we remember with humble gratitude those brave Americans who, at this very hour, patrol far-off deserts and distant mountains. They have something to tell us, just as the fallen heroes who lie in Arlington whisper through the ages. We honor them not only because they are the guardians of our liberty, but because they embody the spirit of service, a willingness to find meaning in something greater than themselves. And yet, at this moment, a moment that will define a generation, it is precisely this spirit that must inhabit us all. For as much as government can do and must do, it is ultimately the faith and determination of the American people upon which this nation relies. It is the kindness to take in a stranger when the levees break, the selflessness of workers who would rather cut their hours than see a friend lose their job, which sees us through our darkest hours. It is the firefighter's courage to storm a stairway filled with smoke, but also a parent's willingness to nurture a child that finally decides our fate. Our challenges may be new. The instruments with which we meet them may be new. But those values upon which our success depends, honesty and hard work, courage and fair play, tolerance and curiosity, loyalty and patriotism, these things are old. These things are true. They have been the quiet force of progress throughout our history. What is demanded then is a return to these truths. What is required of us now is a new era of responsibility, a recognition on the part of every American that we have duties to ourselves, our nation, and the world, duties that we do not grudgingly accept, but rather seize gladly, firm in the knowledge that there is nothing so satisfying to the spirit, so defining of our character, than giving our all to a difficult task. This is the price and the promise of citizenship. This is the source of our confidence, the knowledge that God calls on us to shape an uncertain destiny. This is the meaning of our liberty and our creed, why men and women and children of every race and every faith can join in celebration across this magnificent mall, and why a man whose father less than 60 years ago might not have been served at a local restaurant can now stand before you to take a most sacred oath. So let us mark this day with remembrance of who we are and how far we have traveled. In the year of America's birth, in the coldest of months, a small band of patriots huddled by dying campfires on the shores of an icy river. The capital was abandoned. The enemy was advancing. The snow was stained with blood. In a moment when the outcome of our revolution was most in doubt, the father of our nation ordered these words be read to the people. Let it be told to future world that in the depth of winter, when nothing but hope and virtue could survive, that the city and the country, alarmed at one common danger, came forth to meet it. America, in the face of our common dangers, in this winter of our hardship, let us remember these timeless words. With hope and virtue, let us brave once more the icy currents and endure what storms may come. Let it be said by our children's children that when we were tested, we refused to let this journey end, that we did not turn back nor did we falter. And with eyes fixed on the horizon and God's grace upon us, we carried forth that great gift of freedom and delivered it safely to future generations. Thank you. God bless you. And God bless the United States of America.
Þetta var Barack Obama, 44. forseti Bandaríkjanna, að flytja fyrsta ávarp sitt og hlýtur góðar undirtektir. Það er kannski ekki mikil eða stórmerkileg tíðindi því sem hann sagði, svo sem kannski flest í grófum dráttum viðbúið. Hann talaði mikilvægi þess að fólk stæði saman þau miklu verkefni sem að við blasa, að Bandaríkin myndu núna leiða á ný. Hann talaði að Bandaríkin gæti ekki notað auðlindir í jarðar án þess að hafa velta því fyrir sér hvaða áhrif það hefði. Hann talaði að runnið væri upp nýtt tímabil ábyrgðar og að hver Bandaríkjamaður yrði að viðurkenna það en henni skyldur gagnvart sjálfum sér, þjóðinni og heiminum. Að þau verkefni sem við blösuðu væri ekki ný, en að þau gildi sem að árangur byggðist á væru vinna og heiðarleiki, hugrekki og sanngirni, forvitni, umburðarlyndi, tryggð og föðurlandsást. Hann ávarpaði múslimaheiminn. Hann talaði að leita yrði nýrra leiða fram á við, leiða sem byggðu á sameiginlegum hagsmunum og gagnkvæmri virðingu. Við þurfum að ljúka þessari beinu útsetningu okkar beint frá þinginu. Það að koma að annarri dagskrá hér í sjónvarpinu, en Sveinn Helgason, fréttamaður okkar, í Washington, hefur verið að fylgjast með beint fyrir framan þinghúsið, og í fréttum okkar klukkan 7 fáum við að heyra meira af upplifun hans þarna. Tökum saman það besta á ræðu Obama og sjáum fleiri myndbrot af því sem að gerist í dag. Við látum þetta gott heita að sinni og þökkum fyrir í því.
All about us is